Right, now I'm going to present or introduce our next speaker. That's Andrew Griffiths. Andrew Griffiths is best described as an entrepreneurial futurist. In other words, he specialises in future-proofing businesses across virtually every industry and in every corner of the planet. With 13, possibly 14 now, best-selling books sold in 65 countries and a client base that includes organisations such as the European Union, CBS, Hewlett-Packard, Hertz and Telstra. He's worked with over 500 organisations and is sought after to provide advice and wisdom to the smallest of businesses and the largest of organisations. Andrew has been a commentator on all things business for many years for organisations including CBS, News Corp and Flying Solo, and he's created thousands of sharp, relevant and insightful articles, videos and podcast episodes, as well as being interviewed hundreds of times by various media around the world. He's described by many as the big man with the big heart. Andrew is on a mission to share the entrepreneurial rites of passage that he has learned to help others set themselves apart from the crowd and to stay relevant with their customers for a lifetime. So please welcome Andrew. Thank you.
Thank you, Melissa. You want to come up or I should go down? Thank you. Now, I'm hoping that Mike hasn't jinxed us here and now everything's going to end up going to tears. But anyway, thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Can I have my slide deck up, please, folks? Now, I'm here to talk about the concept of someone has to be the most expensive. Why not make it you? And of course, the caveat with that is this little line here that if you're going to be the most expensive, you have to be the best. And that's certainly what we're going to be kind of going through today. How are we going, guys? I'll go forward. It's operator error today. See, Mike, where are you? Okay, the jinx is spreading, mate. Thank you. That's the concept. Now, I kind of feel like also I've taken all the mystery out of my presentation, right? You know, there it is, bang, it's there. So what on earth are we going to talk about for the next 59 minutes? A very, very good question. Well, the reality is this. It's easy to think that I'm just here to talk about money, and in a room full of people that are really focused on revenue, I guess that kind of makes sense. But it's actually a whole lot more than that. And that's why I'm particularly passionate about this. We're going to go on a bit of a wild ride. So I'm going to suggest you strap in, all right, for the next 58 minutes. Business has become a little bit complicated in recent years. Would you agree with that? Hands up. Participation sport. Yes, right? It's become seriously complicated. I've been in business for 40 years. I used to think it was complicated then. Right? Now I realise how easy it was. If I looked around a room of people, even 10 years ago, this is what I would see. This is business people. I look around the room today, this is what I see. All right? We've got battle weary, we've got worn, we've got zombie eyes, it's got challenging. So I kind of hunted high and low to try and find the right video that really describes what it means for all of us as individuals to be in the seat of doing business, whatever that business might be. And this is the best description. You're the lizard.
A snake's eyes aren't very good, but they can detect movement. So if the hatchling keeps its nerve, it may just avoid detection. miraculous escape.
And the way I look at it is like, okay, for many of us, we feel like the lizard. That's just a Tuesday when it comes to doing business. I'd also just like to say, I was showing that video at a conference on Hamilton Island not so long ago. And at the end of it, I said, by the way, we filmed that just on the Northern Headlands at Hamilton. And of course, someone from the back of the room from the hotel ran in screaming, saying, no, he didn't. You know? So anyway, we get it. This will work easy for you guys if you laugh at my bad jokes. Crisis after crisis, this is what the world looks like in business. Cost of living crisis, the Trump crisis. Not sure if it's a crisis, but it probably is. You go back far enough, Y2K, COVID, all of those kind of things. Crisis after crisis, challenge after challenge. Inspirational stuff, isn't it, right? How do we navigate the challenges, the crisis, and of course, the opportunity that comes with all of them? Well, I think we need to create a culture that naturally keeps us future-proofed, that no matter what is happening, no matter what we're facing, we seem to take it in our stride, but we do it perhaps a little bit more proactively. It sounds so simple, this concept. Just kind of get ready for whatever is coming. But the reality is we kind of don't. And why don't we? Well, I do believe that it's because we spend so much of our time looking inwards on right here, right now, and we spend too much of our time being the snakes or being the lizard, perhaps, you know, where we're running from the snakes. Maybe a framework to help us future-proof is what we need. And that's certainly what I kind of do a lot of work around this. And I kind of think there's 7 kind of key areas that help us to be future-proofed as a business, as an organisation in 2025. First of all, we've got to be realistic, we've got to be radically realistic about what is happening in the world. And that's kind of looking forward and saying, well, what is actually going on and what is that going to mean for us? Number 2, we've got to ask bigger and better questions. Number 3, we've got to kind of be the owl. We've got to play this longer game in an immediate world where everything is so instantaneous and changing so quickly. We've lost that art in many businesses, many industries. Number 4, we've got to win customer proximity, and this is a closeness thing. Number 5, main topic I'm here to talk about, charging what we're worth in a world that's becoming transactionalised. Number 6, we've got to constantly reinvent the value. What are we bringing? What does the value that we bring look like? Okay, and it's constantly changing. And number 7, we've got to out-evolve everyone. That's the key. Just do all of that stuff and you're heading in the right direction. Now, I want to pop up to Japan for a second because we're going to talk about all of that in the context of charging what we're worth. Many years ago, I'm a commercial diver by trade, so I used to make my living blowing bubbles. And I worked for a company called NYK Shipping, one of the largest shipping companies in the world. The first day that I started work for them, they gave me their brochure, which was their 100-year plan. Have you guys all got your 100-year plans on you? You haven't. Has anyone come across a 100-year plan before? Sounds a bit ridiculous, right? Sounds like it's going to be full of motherhood statements and visionary stuff and pictures of clouds and futuristic diagrams of boats. It was the exact opposite of that. A room full of futurists in Japan who are permanently engaged by this company do nothing but spend all day long working out what are the things that are going to destroy, impact, challenge, whatever it might be, this company, this shipping company in the future. And they ask this extraordinary question, is how are we going to react to whatever comes our way and become stronger as a business as a result of that? It's a very, very big question. Again, thought, wow, okay, fluff and bubbles. They predicted everything from global pandemics to crisis, to running out of fuel, to running out of oil around the world. For a company that made 70% of its revenue, which is billions and billions and billions of dollars out of moving oil around the planet, that's a big issue, right? You run out of oil, what are we going to ship around? They addressed everything and said, okay, if this happens, we're going to do this to become better, stronger, more profitable, bigger as an organisation. You name it. Nuclear meltdown in Japan. All the kind of issues. Even that oil one. Okay, people are going to stop moving oil around the world. What's the best thing to freight around the world? Has anyone got any ideas? The best thing to move around? The most profitable thing to move around? Human beings. What did they do? They started a cruise ship company out of America called Crystal Cruises, who happen to be the most expensive cruise ship company in the world. All right? they reacted in a very, very positive way. They were completely future-proofed. They've been around for 150 years. Their cycle of constant and proactive adaptation and evolution is simply done by asking bigger questions. Asking that question, not what are we going to do if COVID hits, how are we going to come out the other side of COVID better? That's the power of big questions that we're not asking these days because we're too busy being the lizard, running away from the snakes on our day-to-day kind of keeping up. And we need to get back to asking bigger questions because the industries that are the ones that are going to be around for a lot longer. And it's never been so easy to lose relevance. Mamma mia. They were committed to being the most reliable, the most trusted, the most future-proof, and definitely not the cheapest shipping company on the face of the planet. In a world of uncertainty, that's the only certainty. Premium is a luxury, it's a guarantee for the future of your organisation, okay? We're going to talk about that more. That's our future-proofing model. Be radically realistic, ask bigger and better questions, be the owl, play a long game, win customer proximity, charge what you're worth, constantly reinvent your value, and out-evolve, out-evolve. I'm going to repeat this. So, whilst I'm talking about charging more, I'm really talking about creating a future-proofed mindset, okay? And that's really the essence because I think we need that right here, right now. We saw during COVID how many organisations disappeared in the first week of COVID, right? No resilience, no financial resilience, and that's just the ones we heard about, right? So, Melissa very kindly gave you an introduction about who I am, but very briefly, why am I the one soapboxing on stage here? Well, yes, I'm an entrepreneurial futurist. So literally, organisations, individuals around the world get me to come in and say, what do we need to do to still be here in 10 years? And that is the conversation for many industries. Not how do we increase our profitability, not how do we kind of, have a better time. How do we make sure we're actually here? Because AI, as we all know, is going to do many of us out of a job in one shape or form. We probably have to step left or right. I'm not afraid of it, but I tell you, it's going to change. I bought my first business when I was 17. I bought a dive shop. It was hugely successful from day one. It was a complete disaster. I bought a dive shop 30 kilometres from the ocean. Does anyone see any problem with that? So you may want to rethink anything that I say from this point on, right? But I've been an entrepreneur business person for a long time. I wrote a book about how to market your business 25 years ago. And of course, yes, as Melissa kindly said, I've gone on to write 15th book is coming out this year. And they're all books that are designed to really help people do what they do. My books have been translated into 20 odd languages, sold in 65 countries around the world. And I particularly love that in the Chinese book, I have one line that has been changed in one of them. In that book, I say, ignore whatever the government says and just do it. And in my Chinese edition, the one line has been changed to, work with the government, they're here to help you. And I go, censorship even hit 101 ways to market your business. Hard as it may be to believe, I'm a professional presenter, have been for 25 years, and I've had the pleasure of presenting everywhere from Mexico to Iran, around the world. Lots of this is my kind of building up to something, believe me. The bottom line, all of that stuff means I've got all the answers, right? Of course I don't, and I never say that I do, and of course never listen to anyone who says that they do. But what I do have is a very, very unique perspective on doing business. And the kind of work that I do is extraordinary. The European Union got me to work with businesses in Britain just before Brexit hit to help them make the transition into a world following Brexit, where their number one customer, who was Europe, the Brits have just told them to bugger off, and what are we going to do? And it was like seeing thousands upon thousands of business owners sitting in a room like deer in the headlights with no strategy, no plan, no kind of moral, except, ask them, why should people buy your stuff? Because we're British. Not a very strong, unique selling proposition in the world that we live in, okay? So, I found that over the last 40 odd years, certainly in the last 10 or 15 years, the crux of many issues and ills within organisations, within businesses, within industries, is this concept of people, they're just not charging enough. Their models are moving in the wrong direction in many respects, and I think your industry is facing that to a degree as well, where you're commoditising, you're becoming transactions, And that's a dangerous place to be in. A, because generally it means someone else drives it, someone else has the power, apart from the people that own the properties, but all kinds of other things come in there. It's just the nature of the world as it evolves. And I understand that, and that's the world, and we've got to look at it. But we've got to understand a little bit more about this whole race to the bottom and all stuff you've heard before about being cheap and having a cheaping pricing structure. And the problem is it's pushing towards that, but it's very problematic for many of us in business because we're not building resilient businesses. We're not building resilient industries. And I think this needs to change, and it's got to change predominantly with how we think, with who we work with, how we work with our partners. We've got to change a lot. If you want to be the most expensive, there are 7 simple strategies. None of these are complicated. These are mindsets. These are things that I'm going to share with you that you can do. They don't cost money. They don't really do anything like that, but they are profoundly impacting in organisations, and I see this every single day. Each of these strategies are interrelated. They all work together, and they're also part of that overall future-proofing model. I believe very strongly that if you're the most expensive, that's your future-proofing model. Right? Simple as that, believe it or not, but I'll aim to convince you of that. This means that not only, I guess, do they help you to build a strong organisation, but they help you to build an organisation with a future, these kind of concepts. So let's work through them reasonably quickly and see if they kind of challenge you, make you feel uncomfortable, all of that I'm happy. The first one is, okay, we've got to have the courage to zig when everyone else zags. And this is particularly relevant for right here, right now. I think extraordinary things happen in the zig, okay, when we are going against the grain. I want to kind of ask you this if you were going to watch a commercial about coffee, let's say I put up a nice little commercial, and we would imagine what it's like. Who's a coffee drinker? Is everyone an addict? All the addicts, put up your hand. I've recently switched to decaf, and I'm embarrassed to say that. This is like an Alcoholics Anonymous group. But we put up a video. It'll be a couple of nice-looking people drinking coffee. Here's an American company who have turned around and come up with a slightly different approach to marketing their coffee. It's called Dirty Diner Coffee.
You folks want a cup of Joe?
Sure.
Yes, please. Joe, coffee! Oh, he's just got to brew it. He won't leave till you try it. Dirty Diner Coffee. Deliciously dirty.
I hope everyone's enjoying their morning coffee. But again, that's kind of having the courage to swim against the tide is the way that I look at that. And now we need to do that. Whatever it might look like, whether it's in our advertising, our marketing, our social media, our day-to-day experience, whatever it might look like. But you swim against the tide, you tend to attract and find the right customers that would appeal to the Dirty Diner sense of humour. Maybe not everyone in the room, but it certainly appealed to me. I think the ability to zig also requires this kind of curious approach. Again, we've got to kind of ask better questions, and that can apply to anything around. And I'm extraordinarily curious. I ask lots of questions around that, but I see the magic happening, in a New York City. Do we need a chef in a restaurant? This restaurant in Turkey, I forget which part of New York it is, doesn't have chefs. It has nonnas running it. What a great idea as a point of difference. Can't do it everywhere, but you can do it there. In Pakistan, a friend of mine grows cows in Pakistan, and they turn around and go, well, there are lazy cows and there are fit cows. And the more lazy cows you have, the less milk you have. So they put Fitbits on all the cows to figure out who are the lazy ones, who are the fit ones. You can tell the fit ones because they're wearing Lululemon and they're kind of doing their exercise, right? But they also know that if they put the fit ones in a little group, they act like a personal instructor with the lazy ones. So the overall herd moves more, they get better milk. They ask a better question. And even this last one, I was in Iran walking down the street and I came across a flag shop. And I asked my guide, wow, there's American flags and Australian flags in there. And what is this all about? It's not what I expected when I was walking down the main street of Tehran. These are all single-use flags, and their only use is to be burnt in the street. Now, I don't know, I've got to say, I think this is a business that really knows its customers. Why buy a really good quality bag that you want to go out, flag that you want to go outside, burn and have a protest about, right? So, we ask better questions. We're prepared to zig. We do this kind of stuff. We don't do enough of this, okay? The magic happens in the zig. Having the courage, right, to zig when everyone else is zagging is scary because we all want to stay the same because it's safe to be the same, right? The reality is it might be safe, but it's far less profitable. And that's the concern. People love the zig and they're prepared to pay for it. So that's number one. Number two, and as I said, they're related. Embrace what makes you unique. Wow, this is a big one. We live in a world that craves unique and rewards unique. And ironically, we're going down this incredibly homogenised path, right? Where, same is happening. And I see this across every industry. We're starting to look so similar. We look the same. If you go to pretty much any accounting website on the face of the planet and you just change the header banner, it will work. You go to any law site, any financial planner site, think about your own industry. It says the same thing. We all say the same. I've done this as an exercise. You go to any financial planning website and on the home page, somewhere in the first paragraph will be the words trusted. There'll be a picture of two old people with a grandchild on a beach, swing, or in a park. Everything's the same. When you question the industry, why? It's because I told my graphic designer to make a website that looks like my competitors, not like something else. You will rarely find your best ideas for doing business in your own industry. These days, your best ideas for doing business will come from other industries, cross-industry innovation. But if we're not looking, we don't see them. We just look inwards. How's that hotel doing what it does? What can I do? What can I learn? How do I advertise? Forget that. Look at a different business. Look at the lawn mowing business. Look at someone else doing something completely different. Cross-industry innovation, it's called innovation for a wonderful reason. We're selling the same stuff. We're doing that. We use the same language. We're underestimating our customers. I go to an accounting website and it says, we do tax. Did anyone here know that accountants do tax? No. I go to a law site. You know what they do? Law. Interesting. Okay, we do the obvious, whereas our consumers are far more educated, aware, informed, capable. They've got access to AI. All of that stuff. We're pushing them away to do things that are going to be easier because we don't make it easy for them to understand what makes us different, why they should buy us. I'd use AI to cut out all the grunt work, and so will many others, okay? We make it hard for them to differentiate us. We become a transaction. As soon as we become a transaction, it is just about the price, okay? As soon as you're a transaction, in many respects, we've kind of lost. Right? We've got to claim that back again. And that's what we're talking about here. But it's hard, okay? All of this when everyone is craving unique and rewarding unique. When I bought my business all those years back, and I learnt this lesson the hard way, I ran my dive shop like every other dive shop. You filled the space with equipment that you didn't make any money off. You charged $295 for a dive course. You had fishnet on the wall. You had plastic crabs, plastic seahorses, and plastic fish. You couldn't run a dive shop without those kind of elements. It was essential. It was a disaster. And I realised that, even for me back then, I realised that I was exactly the same as everyone else. And I was just going broke, more broke. And then I kind of got desperate enough that I changed everything. And that's when my business actually started to work, when I stopped being a dive shop and I became a dive boutique. I became an art gallery that sold dive gear. I tripled my prices. I did all of these things But the driving thing was this. I had to be the best dive shop in Australia. And that came down to service, to experience, to the gear that we sold. I used to sell the cheapest crap gear you could possibly imagine because I thought that's what everyone wanted, okay? What people really wanted was to stay alive. And that's probably not the gear that's going to help you do that. I use the most expensive, right? But I sold the cheapest to my clients, customers. What the heck was that all about? Completely transformed my business, and it became extraordinarily successful by standing out, by embracing what was unique, by being different, okay? So my advice, know what makes you unique and embrace it fully. If you don't know what makes you unique, that's the problem. If you can't sit in a room and go, well, this is what makes us unique, and it isn't, we offer better service. Really, what does that mean? That doesn't make you unique. It's got to be more. It's got to be bigger. It's got to be bolder. It's probably your people. But what does that mean? We've got to dive deeper. We've got to ask better questions going back to that. Let it shine through your business in everything you do. That's our opportunity for the future. That's your opportunity to charge more. That's your opportunity to be future-proofed, okay? Get remarkable at telling the world what it is that makes you different. And I get that these kind of conversations for some of you are probably going to be a bit uncomfortable because, hey, you guys are in revenue. This is what creates revenue. This is the future. Another example, every property I imagine in the room, we all live in fear these days of bad reviews. Some of you might have seen this campaign I'm going to show you. I live in Tasmania, and we've got Mona down there. I'm sure many of you have seen Mona, Museum of New and Old Art. Now, it's not for everyone, right? I had some friends that came from there on the weekend going, it's a bit hardcore, even though a couple of displays have closed down that are making it a bit easier. But they get a fair few one-star reviews, right? How do they deal with them? When you know, right? Now, I love the tear that runs down at the end there. And the last time I was at Mona, they had a band playing, and the whole purpose of the band was to be out of tune, to play the wrong, to be terrible, and to see how long people would put up with it. And crowds would clap at the end of every terrible song. And people were talking, going, well, they're unusual, aren't they? You know what I mean? Not everyone. We don't all have the courage to do what Mona is. And Mona, of course, I understand. The whole idea behind Mona is to be different, but it's a wonderful illustration of reframing, asking better questions, and maybe, embracing what makes us unique. Often, it's the ticking of the box that keeps us stuck. Are we doing the things we should be doing, as opposed to embracing what makes us unique? Are we moving towards homogenisation, or do we have that courage to embrace what makes us unique? And we've got to be having conversations, bigger conversations about that. Number 3, identify the value you offer. Now, there's always conversations about value. I understand that. And there's lots of layers when it comes to it. But, a simple point there is the more value we bring, the more valuable we become. And I think that we forget what really is value. Do you know how your customers really value you? Many years ago, you were valued because of geography. You were simply where you were located was a point. For some businesses, that's still very relevant, but for others in a digital age, it's far less relevant in many respects. But do we really know why our customers value us, or how they value us in particular, is a question. I do think that often our view is a little bit product focused. They value this because of the price, okay? They value that because of the price and it's cheap, then you're a transaction. They'll value that until someone comes along cheaper, and similar value in their view, that's always going to be the case, right? We need to look deeper at the ways that we can be valued. And I think that we've got to look more at these kind of things. You know, how trusted are we? The experience that we have in what we're doing. You know, that's an important piece. Our expertise, what makes us unique. You know, we're starting to see some of the presentations I've seen, again, have come up about this whole experiential side of things still being incredibly relevant. Well, you know, can we use our expertise to create new and more extraordinary experiences, is what I'm trying to say. The business traveller's needs have changed. What does that all look like? What is the energy that you bring when you're met? When, you know, someone comes to a front counter, you know, energy is important. Our consistency. We all understand consistency, but I think it's one of the things that I think is so lacking now from businesses, you know, that inconsistent everything, time again. Our creativity, our reputation, our value, what are the things we actually value and stand for? We'll talk about that later. Partners. Who's behind us? Who's with us? Right? All of these things, which are non-tangibles, they're how we do what we do. These are how we're valued in business in different ways. You know, we all know what it's like. You know, that simple little thing of when you've been travelling for a long time and you get on a Qantas flight and you feel like you've stepped back into a little bit of Australia. We all know what that feels like, whatever, love it or hate it, but we feel like we're home now, even though we're in London. All right? We value that. The last one there, are we fun to do business with? There's a saying, Chinese saying, man without a smiling face should never open a shop. My question is, why do so many miserable bastards seem to? Right? That's the reality. Over time, we need to be constantly redefining the value that we bring, because it's not just a set and forget thing, because consumers are changing. The people we're doing business with, what they value is changing. I've done a lot of work in the mass participation industry, marathons. I may not look like it, I understand, right? But as an industry, it's a tough industry. You know, typically they might go from 10 staff on a Friday to 3,000 staff on the Saturday. You know, their business lasts for 3 days, generally. Singapore Marathon, you know, I've done quite a bit of work with the organisers of that. And the problem that they have is ascertaining what value do they bring to Singapore, for example, for the government to spend, you know, 20, 30, 40, 50 million dollars on hosting it. Well, it's 3 days. We could spend that money on far more things that are going to bring far more value over a longer time. Because the Singapore Marathon would just go, well, we put this much money into the economy over those 3 days, and we do this, and we buy 100,000 bottles of water, and we do this for 3 days. But for value and return, it's not enough. So what they're doing now is saying, well, hang on, what happens to Singapore as a result of us doing this marathon every year? What's changed in people's health and well-being? What has actually changed in terms of tourism movements? You know, what's changed? What's changed? What's changed? And they've kind of figured out that, okay, this marathon doesn't just bring $100 million worth of direct revenue, it brings billions of dollars worth of long-time revenue savings and revenue actually directly in a healthier Singapore, in the take-up of people watching the marathon, living there, who say, I'm going to go and start running, in families that are a part of it, in the inclusion. All of these things now pace this wonderful business case about this marathon that's bigger than 3 days. It's a year-long thing. It's a decade thing. We've started healing Singaporean people by having the marathon. All of a sudden, it moves from 50,000 people running around like lunatics for a couple of days or one day to this is for the future of Singapore, our health and well-being as a community. You see the value suddenly is huge. They haven't changed anything they're doing, but they've reframed their value much, much smarter. Do you agree that that's a big reframe? One at a time. Great. Tonga. Tonga's put a price of $2.1 million on every humpback whale that sails through their waters. They've turned around and said, that's what they're worth in terms of tourism to us. Every humpback has a dollar value, which drives home the need to protect and care for these magnificent creatures. You know, we've got to reframe it. The question we all need to ask is this: how can I become even more incredibly, deeply, truly valuable to my clients in as many ways as possible? Value not just in a value for money. We've got to tell a bigger story. We've got to ask bigger questions. We've got to be bigger and be driving those conversations. Do you really know how your customers value you today, and even more importantly, how they're going to value you tomorrow? Well, I don't know how they're going to value me tomorrow. Well, you kind of need to. I work with a company in Japan. I love Japan, spent a lot of time there, and they're a 150-year-old, another one of these old companies. The founder of that company, all that time back then, started something when there were 3 of them. Every Thursday afternoon, 3 employees get together, sit in a room, and they ask a question: what are we going to sell when our customers no longer want to buy what we're selling today? Think about that as a question. All right, they've done that for 150 years. Today, there's 10,000 people in that organisation. They do everything from making satellites to building boats to providing cars for the auto industry, and they're going from strength to strength to strength. And it's because in no small way to asking questions like that. And the 3 people are picked out in a lottery every Thursday afternoon, and they sit there and think and ask that. Okay, so we've zigged when everyone else has zagged. We're embracing our unique. We've kind of have the courage to identify what it is we offer in terms of value and ask bigger questions. Number 4, we need to understand this concept of customer proximity. It's a simple kind of an idea, but we need to be doing everything we can to close the gap with our customers. We've got to get a lot closer. And again, one of the issues that we have at the moment is we're putting a lot of stuff in between us and our customers. You know, I'll stay at a property and not see another human being, right? So, you know, from check-in to check-out. And I kind of wonder if it's very efficient, but it doesn't build an emotional relationship. It doesn't make me go back to that property. It doesn't necessarily make me go, that was a wonderful experience. In fact, as a human being, it's a pretty soulless experience. I remember doing that in, I think it was Las Vegas many years ago with the coin-operated hotels. You know, and everything was a coin-operated thing, and I mean everything, which was kind of bizarre. I want to ask you a question. Would your customers fight to save your business? That is probably the biggest question that any of us could ask. In a world that is volatile, full of change, crisis, etc., that's the measurement of the depth of our relationship, in my view. Now, we go, well, okay, that's a big ask, right? But let me just tell you very briefly about a company in South Australia. Pre-COVID, they put a press release into the newspaper and into media, on TV, etc., just going, we're Spring Gully, we've been operating for 60 years in South Australia, and we've decided that it's too hard for us to operate in this climate. We can't get our condiments and things they make. Nothing, they weren't selling puppies, they were selling sauces and chutneys and things like that, but they were household names for people in South Australia. They said, it's too hard, we can't get into Coles and Woolies, we're concerned that we're not going to be able to meet our obligations with our staff, so we've made the decision to close down. We're closing down in 1 month. So that's a pretty big thing. News got out. Next thing, there are people in Adelaide protesting in the streets about Spring Gully closing down. This became a national protest around this one little company. It's not a giant company, no billionaires behind it. It was just people making really good products, immigrants that had come to Australia, and they were going, okay, we just can't do it anymore. And of course, because everyone else was fighting for them, I mean, Safe Spring Gully t-shirts, you name it, it was everywhere. Who rings? Mr. Coles. We'll buy $1 million worth of your product and save you. Whether it was for the right reasons or not, probably not, but it was a thing. And then, of course, when Coles comes in to buy, who else is going to come and buy $2 million worth of stuff? Woolies. Spring Gully is saved. But Spring Gully was only saved because their people fought for them. That's a deep, deep emotional connection with a product, right? And the story of this particular business. Proudly South Australian, proudly owned, a long time, etc. I ask again, would your customers fight to save your business? That is the ultimate measure of our relationship. And I think there aren't many of us that could say that they would. Because we might be a transaction. You don't save transactions, right? There's more to that. How mighty a question. So what is customer proximity? You guys kind of know it. It probably comes under different names. It's really just the gap between a business and the customer, okay? It's a measurement of the strength of the relationship, and we see that. It's quite simple, really. A big gap, lack of loyalty, we purchase for convenience, demanding customers, fickle customers, they're just looking for price, rough times ahead for that organisation. We see that a lot. A small gap, loyal customers, high level of engagement, team, collaborators, respectful, long-term businesses. If you've got a small customer gap, I believe you've got what we would call a future-proof business. You've also got the ability to charge what you're worth because those customers value you and understand what it is that you bring. And we do this by being more human. that human interaction, that human engagement, that understanding in a world which ironically is kind of creating that distance. I stayed at a hotel in Sydney, and I'm not trying to bash the industry, but I'm trying to have a very honest discussion about what's going on in the world and what I'm seeing. I stayed at a hotel in Sydney that I've stayed at for 30 years, and they're embracing a big milestone birthday, 50 years, and they're turning around and kind of going, okay, we're going to really embrace tech. So the first thing I did was my digital key. Didn't work, okay? I have to wait because there's 100 people in the queue because no one's digital key is working. I wait in the cafe. Now I've got to order a coffee from the QR code on the table. Didn't work. Get up to the room with my digital key, with my new key, go into the room. I'll order something from room service, QR code. Didn't work. I'll ring down to reception. I've got to use a chat feature to get them. How long do you think it took before someone responded on the chat? 45 minutes. Now, that's great tech, but is that really building a relationship for a client that's been with them for 30 years? Do you think that's smart? You know, is that saving money? Probably. But that's the false economy of saving money, right? At what cost? You know, for a client that's been there 30 years, goes, it's too hard to do business with you because you just don't get it right. Why did I stay there in the first place? Because they just got it right. Even when they got it wrong. My biggest customer complaint issue ever was with that hotel, where they just completely balls it up and done everything wrong. I stayed for another 15 years with them because of how wonderfully and magnificently they handled that bugger up. Because it was human. And they still mention it today. But it's too late, time to change, okay? So, treat your customers as individuals, not as numbers. The other part, again, AI, homogenisation, we're taking away the personal side of it. We've got to bring that back. My next door neighbour in Tasmania is 87 years old, and he gets treated like an 87-year-old man, right? He was a GP and anaesthetist for 50, 60 years. He does 5-day overland walks through the mountains of Tasmania, right, at 87 years of age. Last month, he did 4 multi-day hikes, right? Like, is he your average 87-year-old guy? No, he's not. He's amazing. He's like this lady.
Madonna Buter, an 86-year-old nun. Oh, sorry, sister. Sister Madonna Buter, 86 years old, goes for a morning run. Good for you, sister. She's still active at her age. That's great. Whoa, maybe a little too active. Nap time, sister?
I don't think so.
The sister doesn't think so. Okay. Wait, what? Iron Man? Oh, no. This is a bad idea, sister. A real bad idea. Somebody stop. She's the Iron Man. She won't make it. This is an Iron Man.
The first 45 didn't kill me.
You've done 45 of these? Okay. Do your thing, sister. Do your thing.
My point there is obvious. You know, we've got to treat people like individuals, you know, not like everyone's just, well, they're in an age group or they're a type of person or whatever it is. We are craving that human connection and we are craving to be treated like an individual. We need to be having more conversations about how we can be so much more than a transaction. And that is the key to customer proximity. And that's, again, this wonderful opportunity. Number 5, in a fast world, embrace the concept of slow. And I feel that this is, again, one of those wonderful keys for those organisations that can really charge what they're worth. A lot of it is tied into that, but they've got this concept of slowing things down, making experience better. Going slow, to me, means doing things well rather than doing things fast. My example there before, exactly. When we go slow, we do create experiences, and they're hugely valued by people in a fast world. And there's been a lot of conversation about experience in the last few days, which to me is great. I just think what we need to be doing from an experiential point of view is changing quite dramatically. And a lot of the time, we just need the creativity to be looking for that. This to me is one of those philosophies that it's about differentiating through experience. And there are so many different reasons. I think you already kind of get it. Business that can embrace this slow generally are creating wonderful experience that others seek out and they're going to pay for. And we know more and more that people are prepared to pay. I look at this again, that we win or lose our customers through the little things we do, not the big things. You know, it's always this sense of we've got this extraordinary big thing, That's what's going to keep our customers, but it's the QR code working in the cafe. It's the digital key never working. It's the little things that we go, well, my experience is irritating. As soon as it's irritating, you start going, well, I'm paying $500 a night for irritating. Really? To be honest, I can probably pay $300 a night and have awesome. So I'm looking for experience. I'm looking for that concept. I remember I stayed at a motel in Queensland, and it was just this most wonderful thing. It was a nondescript, wasn't an amazing hotel. There was nothing, I won't they may be in the room, you never know. But it was, on a place where you drive for a long way, and you kind of get there and you're tired and all the rest of it. Very nice, very clean, all very friendly, wonderful. But the thing that they did was so amazing for me was when I got up in the morning, got out in my car, my windscreen had been cleaned, and there was a note under the windscreen wiper that said, we've taken the liberty of cleaning your windscreen so the road ahead is safe. Come back again. Little thing, they employ some old guy, it's about 40, to clean all the windscreens, right? And that's his job. He cleans the windscreens overnight. There might be 100, 200 cars there. He cleans the windscreens. And I looked at that and thought, wow, that is such an example to me of something so little. I went to a dry cleaners recently, and when I got my clothes back, they'd put a sprig of rosemary in with my suit. And they put a sprig of rosemary in with all clothes, and I went, wow, it's such a little thing. It's the slowing down to do the little that gets lost when you're being the lizard, that gets lost when we're busy looking at Excel spreadsheets all the time, that gets lost when we're busy doing transactions that we need to get back. Experiences take many different forms. We tend to think again that it's, it's the smiling front counter. I got to say, I hate a smiling front counter when they just ask the same question they've just asked the person before, and it feels really insincere. A big part of experience is sincerity, but they take on so many different kind of forms. In Italy now, there's an outdoor clothing store that has this minus 20 degree Celsius cool room. So you take your jackets or your sleeping bag and you go in there for a few hours and see how warm it's going to keep you. I mean, that's a pretty kind of a cool idea, I think. To tactile. Apple knew it. Apple have been doing this forever. Who in the room has still got one of the little white boxes at home? Little white box. Hands up, everyone's had a white box. We keep them. Who's got 6 or 7 of them in a line, right? Really, all we can do with them is use them for hamster funeral boxes. They have no purpose. We don't put anything else in them because they're sacrosanct. You remember when you first got it? You remember when you opened it? It takes 3.4 seconds to open, designed by engineers. And when we pull the little lid off, what do you get? A little blow of Steve Jobs air. Just comes out of the top of every box, They purposely designed this concept to slow it down, to make it an experience. I love that. Even tech, I'm not saying that tech is bad, of course I'm not, but can we use it to enhance us? I came across this fabulous example of this recently. This is an app in Rome. I want to paint the picture. It's Friday night, you've had a big night, you wake up on Saturday morning and you decide that, I think I need an exorcism. We've all been there, right? We've all been there. So what do? You open your priest on a scooter app, and it tells you that there's 7 priests in your area right at the moment. You pick which one you want. You've already put in your credit card details. A little map comes up, and it will show you that Father D'Angelo is on their way, right? And they come, do the exorcism or whatever it is. They go off, and then you have to give them how many angel wings ratings. Does that app look familiar to anyone? Has anyone ever used an app that's similar to that to get around? Now, I look at that and say, it's fabulous. As a concept, again, that we're talking about here, sometimes slowing down means asking better questions. Maybe there is room for a priest on a scooter app. Going slow is a state of mind. It's more than that tangible speed. Can you do what others simply lack the imagination or the will to do to give you that, that bit that is different, that differentiates you? It does all the things that we want it to do. Okay, number 6, use strategic storytelling. The better storytellers in the world today, businesses are often the ones that are able to charge more. They're the ones that are using storytelling to do so much more than just do the story of their organisation. Strategic storytelling can do just about anything for your business if done well. It's a fabulous tool. And I get also that sometimes, it's easy to dismiss it. Storytelling, we've all heard it before, we all kind of get it. The problem is generally that we're not using it well. We're not being smart about it. I believe that storytelling can fix any issue in an organisation. It can change the mindset of our clients. It can attract more customers. It can attract more staff. It can attract more partners. It can attract just about everything if we do it well. It's a very, very powerful kind of example and a tool. I want to share an example with you, and one that you're probably not going to expect, but it's about tofu. I want to tell you a story about tofu, and I'm going to go back to Japan for this. I met a CEO of a large group of restaurants that operate out of Japan, and they've been around for a long time. They reached a little bit of a milestone where they were going, our customers want faster food. They want cheaper food. This vortex was happening where they go, we've done all the time motion, kind of studies, we sped it up, we're doing it, but we just keep getting this pressure to do it faster and cheaper, faster and cheaper, faster and cheaper. They're an old business again, a couple of 100 years old. They owned all their own farms, had all their own produce. They're an amazing business. But they said, we have to make a decision. And there was a line in the sand. And the board said, are we going to become a fast food business? Is that what the future is? And they said, well, okay, well, no, we're not. We're going to push back. And they said, we're going to go a different approach. What we're going to do is we're going to get better at telling our customers the story of our business. And they embarked on this wonderful storytelling program, first of all, to teach their staff about their business and how they had 8 generations of farmers growing soya beans. And they highlighted one dish that they made, which is a tofu dish. And they, in the public-facing kind of campaigns, they were talking about what goes into this tofu dish, why it's the best tofu dish in the world. Meet the farmers, meet the soybeans, meet the cows, meet everyone on these properties. It was incredible how they showed the enormous value at every step of the way. And the bottom line message was that if you want to dine at our restaurants and buy this particular dish, it's going to take a little bit longer and it's going to cost a little bit more because it's the best. That chain increased revenue by $30 million for that one dish in 1 year. Think about how many plates of tofu you have to sell to reach $30 million in revenue. That's a lot of tofu, right? Overall, within, I think, 2 years, they'd increased their revenue overall by $300 million, which is, again, enormous amount of food. And simply because then that worked, so they just kept going through the business. They used storytelling so incredibly powerfully, so incredibly strategically. It wasn't just a flippant social media, we tell a story of something that doesn't really matter. Absolute knife-edge strategy is what they did, and it's why it kind of works so well. So you can build new stories, build connections, change thinking, solve problems, issues, manage change, talk about what's going on, all of that kind of stuff, and people will value that. They'll see it, they'll create an emotional connection, which again moves you out of the transaction space. Our stories need to change. We've got to be adapting them. We've got to let them evolve. It's part of our concept here. Be strategic and make them personal, make them wise. So take your storytelling to a much higher level, much more sophistication and much more relevance is really what I'm here to talk about. Number 7, the last one, be known for something bigger than what you sell. And there's no doubt that this has become so significantly important. And we get it. Be bigger than your business is a moral here. We know that. People now want to know more. I want to do business. Given the choice between a business doing good and really a business that's very good at telling me what good they do, or as opposed to a business that I don't know what they do out there, the one that is doing good is going to win. And we've seen some great examples of that. Now more than ever, I think I'm not the only one. Consumers want to spend money on organisations that are bigger and that align with our values. Really important from that perspective. Anyone who's been following along the Patagonia game at home, Patagonia, that's an amazing concept, has become the most reputable brand in the USA. $3 billion in value, and they've done the thing of giving the company back to the earth and giving $100 million odd a year, or whatever it might be now, I can't remember the numbers, but a lot of money going back every year to different things. But imagine that, imagine being the most reputable business in America. It's an extraordinary kind of a thought when you think about it. Be bigger, be passionate, tell the story of why you're being bigger, and embrace it is what this is all about. Do that stuff, just talk about it, share it. Your customers will find you. They will look for that, and that will become this great point of difference, but you can't pay lip service to it. So we want people who are passionate, committed, and engaged to buy from us. Show them why they should. Okay, people will buy if we make it, better for them, more meaningful, and that's a change. So there's 7 kind of key strategies there. We do that, we can become the most expensive. We can do that, we can become future-proof, right? I see it every single day across all industries. We've got to learn we've got to have the courage to zig when everyone else zags. We've got to, number 2, embrace what makes us unique. Now more than ever, be unique, embrace it, if you can figure out what it is. Number 3, identify the value you offer and keep it evolving in meaningful ways. Number 4, close the gap between your customers. Okay, get that connection back in a world that is distancing us, and that's the problem. Number 5, in a fast world, embrace slow. Number 6, use strategic storytelling. Don't get caught up in this fact of, storytelling, you never heard it all before. You just haven't heard the right stuff. And then number 7, be known for something bigger than what you sell. Okay, that's the key. But of course, we've also got to offer more value, so I'd like to have a bonus strategy, because we've always got to exceed expectations, right? This is the line I use all the time. You can't just put lipstick on a wombat. Now, just to clarify, that's a wombat, and this is a wombat with lipstick. Okay, is everyone on board so far? Is everyone keeping up with that? That's cute. What does it really kind of mean? Okay, well, it really means that you can't just pay lip service to what this overall concept of someone's got to be the most expensive. It may as well be you, but if you're going to be the most expensive, you've got to be the best. That's what it translates to, right? So you can't, if you're really not very good at what you do, like let's be honest, let's say you're crap at what you do, be cheap, okay? You can't be the most expensive and deliver the least. That model doesn't really work, okay? So we've got to move on from that. And so, we need to have an obsession. And I look at this going, the obsession needs to be within our organisation. The best croissants in the world are made in Melbourne. French would argue that, of course, but definitely, anyone who's been to Loon, people are lining up at 6:30 in the morning in winter for an hour to get a freaking croissant. They're not exactly in short supply, anywhere in the world these days, or most places, because there's this ridiculously obsessed owner behind it. A friend of mine makes walking sticks. You can buy a walking stick from a mobility store for $20. He sells his walking sticks for $85,000 US. And he's totally obsessed about these walking sticks. Okay? Another friend of mine, a guy called Peter Lick. Peter Lick is a photographer. Australian guy, now in America. He's got a team of 350, 400 people as a photographer. That's unheard of in its own right. He's got the Guinness Book of Records award for selling the single most expensive image in history for $6.4 million US for one photo of a lake. Amazing. And you go, wow, he must be a great photographer. To be honest, there's probably far better photographers out there. And I say that with all love and respect, but there are none that are as obsessed as him. He used to be my next door neighbour. I have never met any man in the world more obsessed with photography and working in his business than this guy. It's incredible. That's why he's a success. It's obsession. So we need to be having bigger conversations around this about, what does it mean for us to be the best? Is it just a throwaway line? I don't think it is. You wouldn't have that as a theme for this. It means so much more. And I hunt the world looking for those businesses that are the best, because they also invariably are the most expensive. They're also invariably future-proofed. They're also invariably kind of offering great experiences, telling great stories. They're doing all the things, whether they're big businesses or little businesses, doesn't really matter. So my challenge to you today, ladies and gents, and I'll leave you with this, is if you adopt these 7 strategies, yes, you can be the most expensive. And that then translates to, ideally, more profitability. And even though we're going to automatically go, I won't get business because we're going to be too expensive, that's what's got to shift, right? But as a minimum, you can start to charge what you're truly worth. And as promised, none of what I talk about there is going to require a capex of $15 million, $20 million. It's a capex of brain space. It's having more meaningful discussions, more powerful discussions. Perhaps you might just build a business that's actually future-proofed on top of that. And really what I'm hoping for the most is that today I've challenged you to think bigger and bolder. And that's what my job is. Most of the time is quite literally to do that. Thank you. Before I finish, I want to do 2 quick things. You can all get a copy of this presentation from this QR code. I'm going to put that up again in a second for you, but I just wanted to do 2 other quick things. I just want to say a big thank you to Melissa and the team, Andre and Steph, is it? Sophie, and the rest of your team for being such wonderful people, the most professional event organisers that I've encountered for a long time. And congratulations to you, Melissa. I'd also like to say this was me 16 weeks ago. Forgive my indulgence to show this, folks. I went in to see my doctor because I was feeling a little bit unwell. And a couple of days later, basically, I had a quadruple heart bypass and open heart surgery. So that was on January the 23rd. And this is the first time for me to be back on a stage since then. And I just want to say thank you to you for letting me be here. And thank you to you. I've got to also say, you know your bodies, please listen to them. You know, I was lucky, I listened. My cardiologist, my surgeon said, you would not have lived a couple more months if you didn't listen to your body and come in when you did. So there would have just been an empty space up here for an hour. It would have been very awkward, you know, but I just want to say thank you. It means a lot to me to be here today and to be back doing this. So again, thank you, Melissa. Thank you, ladies and gents. Thank you, Don. My pleasure. Sorry, I'll get out of your way.
Thank you so much, Andrew. It's great to have you back, and I think you nailed it. So I'm sure everybody will agree you definitely did. There was so much value in that presentation, so thank you. And also the insights from a customer perspective to the industry as well is really incredibly valuable too.